consent decrees. Consent decrees, my good friends, that were created by federal judges to make sure that in the city of Boston, there was a one-on-one hiring, and in education as well in the city of Boston, one-on-one hiring because of the history of the city of Boston's discriminatory practices in terms of employing Black people in jobs. Oh, by the way, the Supreme Court has said essentially in education, you cannot put a checkbox to say if you're Black or any race whatsoever. And guess what? With that comes elimination of affirmative action as we know it. Oh, by the way, this decision is going to have ramifications, as I indicated, across the lifespan of African Americans, and actually it's going to impact on white Americans too. Now, why do I say it's going to impact on white Americans? Is because guess what? A majority of the people that have been impacted by affirmative action has actually been white women. That's not to insult, that's just to say that is the reality. Is that white women have benefited from affirmative action more than any other group. Fact. Here's another fact. Oh, this one is important to realize that if affirmative action goes away, and the Supreme Court has essentially said in education, it will go away. Well, even white men have benefited from affirmative action. Oh, you know what I'm talking about, Boston. Yeah, white men have benefited from affirmative action by essentially saying on their applications for contracts that they are actually a minority firm. Oh, they've been doing that for years. Yeah, partnering with other groups and then saying, hey, guess what? We're a minority group. Oh, the benefits have been good for white Americans, and this is not to insult by any stretch of their imagination. I'm just saying, my good friends, that the benefits have benefited, the benefits of affirmative action has been for white men and white women. A lot of Black folks have not benefited from affirmative action in many ways, but even though a lot of Black folks have not benefited from affirmative action, there are many that have, including Supreme Court Justice Clarence, I'm not going to say his middle name, well, whatever I call him, but you know, it's not nice. But Clarence Thomas, yeah, he benefited from affirmative action. He got jobs because of the race and the color of his skin. It surely wasn't because of core competency, but at the same time, he has benefited now. He stands with the other folks saying, guess what? Stop affirmative action. Well, I want to hear what you got to say. And you can call in at any time. Oh, by the way, I'll share that number. Yeah, the number's right here. Hold on. Let's see. Where am I? Right there. Right there. Right there. That's the number over there. Call-in number is 301-715-6. Wait a minute. I got to read it myself. 301-715-8592. Again, 301-715-8592. The meeting ID is there as well. 89. What is that number? I don't know. You can read it. It's in the back of my picture right there, or back of me. Yeah. Call in. Call in because we want to have a lively conversation about this issue of affirmative action and its impact on Boston and, in fact, the nation. Oh, by the way, with this affirmative action, for the lack of a better word, ruling, it harkens back in many ways to a ruling that happened many years ago, my good friends. Yeah, a ruling that happened many years ago. And that ruling impacted all of us as well. Oh, do you know what ruling I'm talking about that the Supreme Court made? Yeah, that ruling, similar in many ways, and I'm going to talk about the similarities. Is that a word? Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to talk about how these things are similar. It was actually in 1857, March 6, 1857, in the Dred Scott decision versus Sanford. Dred Scott versus Sanford, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Black people were not American citizens and could not sue in courts of law. The court ruled against Dred Scott, an enslaved Black man who tried to sue for his freedom. Yeah, it's called the Dred Scott decision, my good friends. Well, this decision is just as bad as Dred Scott decision, essentially saying about us as African Americans and others that we are not having any right to affirmatively address, yes, those things that have happened over many years to impact the African American experience in education. So should Black folks have the opportunity to apply and win opportunity to actually go to Harvard University, BU, BC, all the other universities that are in and around our communities? Of course we should. But with the Supreme Court ruling, forget about it. I'm going to say it again. With the Supreme Court decision, forget about it. If you apply, we, won't be getting in like we didn't get in before affirmative action. And by the way, education is the big change agent. Even Barack Obama has said that on numerous occasions, is that education is the most important thing to equalize the playing field in many ways. With an education, we can become doctors and lawyers and all sorts of professionals, but we can't do it without an education. That's why historically Black colleges and universities were created, because of segregated educational patterns. And that's what the Supreme Court decision is going to make. A new Jim Crow, a new way of excluding Black folks and other folks from educational opportunity. That's a fact, my good friends. This is All Things Black Politics here live on Boston Black News. I'm your host, Leon Rock. We're talking about the Supreme Court's affirmative action decision and how it could impact racial equity in higher education, and not just higher education, my good friends. Yeah, the Supreme Court decided on Thursday, just yesterday, to set new limits on affirmative action, striking down the current race-conscious admissions policies, in place at both the University of North Carolina and Harvard University, right around the corner in Boston, the decision sided in part with students for fair admissions. This convoluted group of conservatives that challenged the admissions policies of both the University of North Carolina and Harvard University, members of this group argued that affirmative action policies at schools were discriminatory against white and Asian students. Well, I got to bring this anecdotal evidence here. And I know I shouldn't be bringing it up because it's old hat. I should not be bringing it up because it's old hat. It happened long ago. But I got to bring it up just as an education for us all. I said earlier that affirmative action has actually been good for essentially white women. That's a fact. Look at the data. It's a fact. In Boston,
Prime Day is coming July 11th and 12th.
in Boston, and I don't know what happened there. In Boston, my good friends, actually, our U.S. state senator was in a controversy some time ago because as a white woman, she indicated that she was Native American on her application for Harvard, utilizing affirmative action. I brought it up just to tell you the glaring truth is that white women have been using affirmative action as an affirmative way of getting into colleges and universities across the United States. Has there been some abuse of affirmative action? There's no question, no doubt, but it hasn't been with us. Our skin in itself tells you if you're Black or not, at least in the color of your skin. That's a fact. There are others who have used that system to their advantage. Yeah. Now the Asian community, and this is not to insult by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, I should come down on that. And that is not the Asian community per se. There are people within that conservative group, that student for fair admissions, that believe, and that's what their statement was to the Supreme Court, was that they were being discriminated against because of their Asianness or their education against Black folks, pitting essentially Blacks and Asians against each other. Not nice. I'm going to say it again. Not nice. Yeah, the Supreme Court decision states that admissions programs at Harvard and UNC lack sufficiently focused and measurable objectives warranting the use of race, unavoidably employing race as a negative manner, and involve racial stereotyping and lack meaningful endpoints. Those admission programs can be reconciled with guarantees of equal protection clause under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. The decision, however, states that nothing prohibits universities from considering an applicant's decision on how race affected the applicant's life, so long as the discussion is concretely tied to a quality of character or unique ability that is particular to the applicant and can contribute to the university. What kind of crock-a-doodle stuff was they saying? Yeah, I kept it clean. Crock-a-doodle. This is All Things Black Politics. I'm your host again, Leon Rock. The decision, however, is bad. It alters more than 40 years of legal precedent that supports the consideration of race in college admissions. Oh, by the way, here's the deal. When you go to college and you graduate from college, there are institutions that begin to actually try to get you into jobs. Fortune 500 companies, blue collar companies, white collar companies, they're all looking for employees with education, higher education. But if the employees, and we've seen that in the past, are all white, well, guess what? I'm talking about all white coming out of white institutions. Because of lack of affirmative action anymore, where are these white institutions going to get employees? From other white institutions. That's a fact, my good friends. Yeah, the pipeline of employers looking for employees with higher educational experiences is a university pipeline. And if that pipeline shuts down, well, then the United States Supreme Court, the US Senate and the US House is responsible. That's a fact. Oh, now there's going to be some people that say, well, Rock, well, Leon, you're stretching this. Well, not necessarily. How am I stretching it? Actually, many of these people that came on the Supreme Court came on during a time in which the United States Senate was controlled even by one vote by Democrats. And Democrats went ahead and went along with Donald Trump's appointments. Yeah, Democrats. Yeah. Oh, yeah, under the guise that, the appointees, Trump's appointees said during hearings under oath, I believe in the Constitution and I believe in the laws and I believe in the fact that if a law exists, I'm not going to reverse our precedent. I swear under oath and on the Bible. Lies. Lies, 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 and more lies, and not nice. 40 years of legal precedent supporting consideration for race in college admissions. And guess what? Here we go with essentially a Dred Scott decision. We don't have any rights. African Americans have to continue to build our own institutions to address our needs. That's a fact, my good friends. Historically, Black colleges and universities are going to grow because of this. Actually, I heard from, I was listening to an interview on CNN from the university president over at Howard University. And he actually indicated that a majority of students in one of the classes over the past couple of years, graduating classes or admissions classes, let me say admissions classes, couple of years, a majority of them had not been admitted to white universities. But they came to Howard University, that essentially 25% of the folks that are doctors Black doctors in the United States come from Howard University. Fact. Because white schools of medicine aren't admitting Black people. That's why we need affirmative action. Yeah. That's a fact. I salute Howard University, HU, for the work that they do, and so many other historically Black universities doing the work because of the exclusionary approach that some of these universities have had for centuries. Oh, we're not supposed to talk about race in this country. Yeah, sounds like DeSantis in Florida. Let's not talk about race. Let's eliminate conversations about race in books, in our history, become revisionists. Slavery didn't exist as far as DeSantis is concerned. And those yahoos, yeah, those Yahoo supporters. Fact of the matter is that institutions that use affirmative action policies take an individual student's race and ethnicity into account. And well, we should during the college admission selection process. Why not? Black folks have been excluded for how many years? And then people are going to have the audacity to say all is well and forget what happened many years ago? Come on now. Not nice. The fact of the matter is, affirmative action rose in popularity in the 1960s to address racial inequities in access to educational opportunity. I know, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no question, no doubt, I would have never been admitted to the University of Massachusetts in Boston if they didn't have an affirmative action policy and plan in place. That's a fact. I would have never, ever been admitted to the Cambridge College or other universities that I've attended. I know that your core competency alone would not allow Black folks for admission to these white colleges and university. Those are facts, my good friends. So when I read and heard about the Supreme Court issuing this landmark ruling, I was disappointed, to say the least. Oh, you remember the other Supreme Court landmark ruling back in 1978, the Regents of the University of California versus Bakke, which essentially cemented the place of affirmative action policies in colleges and universities across the United States. That was in 1978, my good friends. It was cemented then. And federal judges have used that affirmative action policies and decisions of the Supreme Court in that landmark case to actually impact on educational opportunity in Boston, one-on-one hiring. If it wasn't for affirmative action, as I indicated earlier, there would not be Black teachers in the whole Boston's public school system. I remember in 1971, I led a student boycott because of the lack of Black teachers and Black guidance counselors. And Judge Garrity, in his wisdom, said, hey, guess what? This de facto segregation cannot stand anymore. Segregation now and segregation forever has to end. Now the Supreme Court is saying segregation now and segregation forever. I'm going to say it again. That is what the Supreme Court has told Black Americans. And it will forfeit, and they don't care if white women were the beneficiaries of affirmative action. They have done that before. No big deal. Yeah. The fact is, the average Black to white student graduation rate gap in the top dozen public universities that do not use affirmative action was 10%, according to research by the University of California, Los Angeles. The average gap to the top dozen public universities with affirmative action plans was 6%. So the data is showing that affirmative action actually works. Fact of the matter is, social inequities that impact education impacts the economic, the economic status of African Americans. There is, in many ways, an impact, or what I'll call a lasting impact, on the historical exclusions of Black folks from colleges and universities across the United States. And there continues to be an unrepresentation or underrepresentation of Black folks in four-year colleges across the United States. That's a fact. So the Supreme Court has done a disservice to America. I hope and I pray that people are listening in and understand that we have to do better. That's my position, and I could be right. And actually, I know I'm right. Affirmative action is a good thing. Well, you know, I mentioned that historically Black colleges and universities will have to take up some of the slack on this issue. They're going to have to. The only problem is that historically Black colleges and universities have historically been underfunded by the federal government in terms of federal dollars. Yeah, they call them land grant colleges under the, guess they got that name under the administration of Abraham Lincoln. Land grant colleges. Well, these land grant colleges have been attempting to address the challenges of segregation in segregated public schools and private schools for many a year in higher education. If you can't get admitted to a white school for those high-end opportunities to become a doctor, a lawyer, a minister, yeah, you would go to Harvard. Instead of going to Harvard Divinity School, you would go to Howard Divinity School, the Black Mecca. Instead of going to Harvard Law School, you would go to Howard Law School, the Black Mecca. Yeah. Instead of going to Harvard University School of Education, you would go to Howard University School of Education, the Black Mecca. The fact of the matter is that historically Black colleges and universities are finding themselves now to not only be the ones that reverse the inequities in higher education, but they might find themselves having a higher number of people attending this college and these universities that have been historically Black. But the fact of the matter is that you don't have the money that they deserve. Oh, let me pose this question to you, my good friends. Will this now decision on the part of the United States Supreme Court make Black folks finally come together? We haven't been together. I got to tell you, I don't think that we have been together as a group for many a year. I'm not trying to dog African Americans. I love my people. But when my people aren't doing what we supposed to do, I'm going to call it out as I see it. We have not been doing what we ought to do. Now, I'm going to call out a couple of folks. Well, I'm not going to name them by name. Pause. I'm not going to name them by name, but I'm going to say our entertainment industry. Folks that have billions of dollars and have sucked the lifeblood out of our youth with concert after concert after concert after concert, throwing money hither and thither, strip clubs and all that type of stuff. I'm talking about rappers. Not all of them, but a majority. Billionaires, millionaires, made up of Black folks that need to contribute in building our institutions. Maybe, just maybe, this is the clarion call for Black America to come together and educate our own. Stop relying on other folks to fix us. Colleges and universities, exclusion, segregation, That's what that's all about. Exclusion and segregation. That's the time that we're in right now. They have brought us back to the Dred Scott decision. And the fact of the matter is that the end of affirmative action will have impact beyond higher education. Beyond. And why do I say that? Let's talk about first higher education and the impact of this whole issue of you can't ask what race a person is. You know, Georgetown University made a decision. I'm going to try to connect the dots. Georgetown University just made a decision a couple of years ago, and it said essentially that they wanted to apologize and make retribution for those humans, Africans, that were enslaved in this country. And the institution of slavery over there at Georgetown, they wanted to apologize for the families that they impacted on. They essentially sold human beings. Georgetown. For their educational institution, to build their educational institution. Facts. And they wanted to make things right. Essentially, they made a decision to make sure that any family who were descendants of those human beings that were enslaved would have an opportunity to education in free education over at Georgetown. But now, under the Supreme Court ruling, that decision by Georgetown may be a moot issue, may be done, because how are they going to know if race, that checkbox, cannot be used? Oh, someone's going to write an essay and say that they're Black? Oh, so Black folks are supposed to write essays for every opportunity, just pouring out their experiences as Black people in a bigoted system. Well, you know something, it's pretty interesting. I got to tell you, in some ways, this may come back to haunt this guy that took the lawsuit out because he didn't get admitted to Harvard University. It may come back to haunt him, because if he's looking for admission, you know, in many of the colleges and universities, over the years, they have essentially created pathways for African Americans to be part of the admission staff. That's a fact. And as African Americans are on the admission staff, Just think about it. I'm on the admission staff as an African American. And the Supreme Court just ruled that I cannot consider race with a checkbox. And the school departments, the educational institutions of higher education, have to take off that checkbox to say that you're a minority or say what race you are. You're an African American. That's done. But the fact of the matter is that these recruiters, many of them who are African American, there may be pushback with African American recruiters with regards to this whole convoluted Supreme Court decision. And the pushback just may be that those Black recruiters begin to do things differently. Wink, wink. They begin to do things differently. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to say it. Here's the deal. If Shaquanda, that's not to insult your name now, for the folks that's name is Shaquanda. If Shaquanda comes in and applies to the university in which I, as an African American, am looking at the application, I know, well, at this point of history, Shaquanda is Black. Wink, wink. So Shaquanda, I'm going to ask her for more information or support her application. Because guess what? Shaquanda deserves the opportunity. Raheem does too. Hakeem does too. Felicia does too. I'm going to be picking up on all of that and more. There was a time where I said, don't use names that are identifiable as Black names. Why? Because of discrimination. Folks, particularly in the business community, know by zip code or by name how to exclude us. But in this situation we find ourselves in, maybe, just maybe, those recruiters will look differently. I'm talking about Black recruiters, will look differently when they see those names, Jamal, and say, hey, guess what? I'm going to give Jamal an opportunity here. I'm going to give Shaniqua an opportunity here. I'm going to give Mercedes an opportunity here. Oh, you know the names. This is Leon Rock, and this is All Things Black Politics, live here from Washington, D.C. We're talking about affirmative action and its impact on higher education and its impact on the African American community. Oh yeah, you can tell that I'm more than concerned about affirmative action and its impact on my hometown, the city of Boston, and Roxbury. Oh, this is going to impact in so many ways. Remember the MBTA? Yeah, that slow driving machine, MBTA? Well, guess what? If it wasn't for affirmative action, those Black folks that you see working in the MBTA wouldn't exist. Oh, by the way, if it wasn't affirmative action, I'm going to tell you right now that the police commissioner wouldn't be, the Black police commissioner wouldn't be a Black police commissioner in the city of Boston if it wasn't for affirmatively recruiting a Black police officer and Black police commissioner. That's a fact. Oh, there has been Black superintendents in the city of Boston schools. They would have never had the opportunity if it wasn't for affirmative action. Affirmative action has been in many ways the saving grace for Blacks in Boston, period. That's where jobs have come from. Affirmative action. And by the way, and it hasn't been a pretty picture, my good friends. And why do I say it has not been a pretty picture? Because in some ways, affirmative action has not benefited us to the level that it should have. Oh, you remember the big dig? How many Black folks, how many Black firms were actually affirmatively recruited to do that big dig work? The billions of dollars that came in for the big dig. Not many, my good friends, not many. So has it been a disappointment? In some ways, it sure has. But at the same time, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's what the Supreme Court did. And then the Supreme Court, what do you call it? The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, as one of the the first Black woman on the Supreme Court, chastised him for saying, oh, by the way, you can put in your essay your experiences on being Black in America. That's okay. Well, that's freedom of speech, isn't it? Duh. And as the Supreme Court Justice, first Black woman Supreme Court Justice said, that's like putting lipstick on a pig. When it came to that particular issue, Supreme Court Justice, head of the Supreme Court, how dare you talk about, oh, by the way, you can write about your own personal history. Well, we do anyway, don't we? But why not have that checkbox? It's a checkbox. We got a whole bunch of other checkboxes, don't we? Well, this is All Things Black Politics, live here from Washington, D.C. I've been attempting, in many ways, to dissect the decision made by the United States Supreme Court to bring us back to the brink, Yeah, you know what brink I'm talking about. Yeah, I've already said it. Brown versus Board of Education. Well, I didn't say that one, but I did say the Dred Scott decision. Yeah, because that's what it feels like, the Dred Scott decision. That, Black folks have no rights, that a white man is bound to respect. Because they said that we are not citizens. That's where they're trying to draw the line. That's where they're going, my good friends. And we have to be ready to say no way. We ain't going back there, my good friends. Hook or crook, we're not going back. It's time for us to stand up and say no way. And it's time for those institutional folks those people that have authority and power in the United States to do something right. Yeah. And I'm talking about our Black folks, billionaires and millionaires. They got to do more. They got to help us build our institutions, particularly historically Black institutions, HBCUs. If there is anything that is helpful in regards to the decision by the Supreme Court, it is helping us coalesce together to empower ourselves to build our institutions. Something like what Pastor Bruce Wall has been saying for many a year and has been doing. And that is building our institutions, building our Black institutions. That's what it's all about. And I leave you with that, building our Black institutions. This has been Leon Rock, and this has been All Things Black Politics, live here from, yes, Washington, D.C. We will see you next week at 11 o'clock, and I hope to get on the program the city councilor that is taking some heat as of late with the issue of race. And you know who that is. And we're going to try to get her on next week on the program. So welcome and thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us on this broadcast, and we will see you next week. Peace.